It's funny how something can be really dangerous and yet we turn a blind eye to it. The world's very first cigarette-making factory was opened in London in the year 1856. For the first time, ordinary men and women had access to tobacco in a handy form. But this wasn't the only dangerous thing about smoking. Matchmaking was one of the most poisonous jobs in the entire Industrial Revolution. The first generation of cigarette smokers just loved Bryant and May's Strike Anywhere and Lucifer matches, produced in a hellish factory in the East End of London. In the 1880s, the Bryant and May match girls became famous not only for their disgusting job, but because they organised and won a strike to get their appalling working conditions improved. Their action was the beginning of the trade union movement. But in a world where you could fall off bridges, get lung disease from clay, or burn in a glass furnace, how did they create a cause célèbre out of a gloop that looks like salad cream? Louise, it's hard to believe that this tiny little thing could be dangerous.
It's difficult to believe, isn't it? And of course, it was just a little bit on the end as well. It was just the striking tip that caused all the problems.
What was it made out of?
Well, that would have had a mixture like this, so composition, what the workers called a compo, like this, which is sulphur and resin.
But presumably not just in a little tin.
Well, no, Bryant and May wouldn't have got very far if they'd been working on this kind of a scale. They had a huge factory in the East End of London, massive rooms, massive vats of this composition.
But what was poisonous about it?
Well, nothing poisonous about this, so I wouldn't be standing here. But what they would have used to make the Lucifer match was this here. This is yellow phosphorus here. This is very nasty stuff. It was used as an insecticide. People used it to commit suicide.
What did it do to the workers?
Well, inhaling or ingesting even a really tiny amount of this would make you sick. And not just sick either. I've heard in the course of my research that the streets around Bryant and May's biggest factory in East London, when the girls came off shift, was pretty much awash with pools of fluorescing vomit. Because it would actually make you fluoresce. If you were poisoned by phosphorus, it would actually make you fluoresce, made your clothes glow, and made you very sick. But it got a lot worse than that as well. And what was special about Fairfield Road, the Bryant and May factory in Bow, was that they had no canteen there. So there was no separate area for the women to eat their food. So they ate their food where they worked. So whatever bread, probably a bit of bread you brought in from home, the phosphorus all day has been settling on it, the particles coming out of the air, settling on your bread, like a deadly seasoning, which when they then ate it and ingested it, would get straight into their mouths and into their teeth, through holes in their teeth, and it would start to decay the jawbone itself. And pieces of bone the size of peas were apparently worked out through the gums, if you can imagine that. And it caused the most appalling smell, to the extent that some of the women suffering for it were almost like lepers. They were disfigured, they had to live on the outskirts of town. And that's why it's often known as phossy jaw. That's what the women themselves called it. This is red phosphorus, and that's completely safe. But because the Lucifer, the Strike Anywhere match, was the most popular type, didn't need a box, didn't need a striking strip like this did, that's what they kept making, and that's what caused the problems for their workforce.
What an incredibly vicious process just to create that effect.